Welcome to Convo Fango. Today, we are joined by the accursed director. He's not accursed that I know of. We're joined by the accursed director, Kevin Lewis. Yay! So
Yeah.
first off, tell us what the accursed is about.
It's a, you want to say it's a cabin in the woods movie, that's fine. But it's really about, the theme is really the sins of the mothers or visit on their daughters. And it's basically about this young nurse who takes a job in a cabin, takes care of a caretaker to an older lady. And you find out that things aren't what they seem. And it's kind of a hark back to the 70s movies of like Rosemary's Baby and The Omen and things like that, the more psychological vibe that I really enjoy. And that was kind of what drew me to the project and what I want to inject in the project. So is that, what's cool about horror is I think there's different genres, right? You have horror, and then you can have like slasher horror or body horror or whatever. This is like psychological horror. So yeah.
Yeah, anytime someone tells me that they're not a horror fan, I'm like, hold on, let's pump the brakes on that. I'm like, you are, you just don't think you are. And then I'm like, tell me some movies that you
Yeah.
don't like. Tell me some movies that you do like.
Yeah.
And guaranteed they're
Yeah.
naming a very specific subgenre that they don't like. And I'm like, okay, well, horror is
Yeah.
a lot more than just this little thing that you just named. So how about these movies? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I do like those. And I'm like, you're a horror fan.
Exactly. Like Alien, right? Alien's a sci-fi movie, but it's a
Mhm.
horror movie,
Exactly.
right? Like there's so
Yes.
many. That's what's great about, and even good drama sometimes could be horror. And
Mhm.
if you watch a romantic comedy, sometimes it could be horror.
See, this is one of the problems of being a horror fan also though, because
Yeah.
anytime I'm like enjoying like a rom-com or something, and I mean I consume so much horror, it's insane. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is sweet, but wait, and I'm like
Yeah.
thinking of the ways it could go horribly wrong, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, no, this is like a Hallmark movie, so it's actually
Yeah.
gonna go the way that you think it's gonna go. It's not actually like, oh, he's gonna lock you in the basement. So
Yeah.
but I'm
That's
like
it's
programmed to
funny.
think that way.
You brought that up. What movie that comes to mind is that movie Audition, which I love.
Mhm.
And that movie, it's like you're going along and everything, and then that third act, man, it just things just turn on its head. That could have been kind of romance, drama,
Mhm.
and then now I get why it's a horror movie. Like the third act is completely just whoa. So
Yes.
yeah, that's what's fun about the genre, though. You can play around with it, right? You can do a
That's why
lot of
it's the
cool things.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Audition, you're like, oh, is this an Oscar contender? And then they
Yeah.
like ruin all their
Totally.
Oscar chances in the third act,
Yep,
but like that's what makes it so good.
absolutely. Yep.
That's a great one. That's a great example because they don't really like ramp it up either. It's kind of like little bit of hints where it's like, okay, things are getting weird, but it's not necessarily like horrific. It's just like we get some strange elements
Yeah,
happening and like little like dream-like sequences. And then that
yeah.
third act, they're like, and then we're gonna just fucking rip your eyeballs out of the socket. So sorry, I have a little
Go
bit of
for it.
lag on my end. There we go. Okay. So tell us about the cast. How like you got Meg Foster, you got Mina Savard. Like, how did that happen?
I mean, Meg Foster's a legend, right? Like
Mhm.
she's just incredible, and what's so amazing about Meg is like she can just be there in that bed, man, and you just feel the vibe, that thick air, that thickness in the air, and that just creepy. She's so good, and she's such a beautiful person inside and out. So Meg was wonderful to work with. We have Sarah Gray who plays Ellie, and she came from a Netflix show called The Order, and she's just great. She reminded me of a Hitchcock ingenue, like Kim Novak or Grace Kelly vibe to her on the movie. She's so committed. We connected so well with the script, and I'd come in and say, "Hey, I don't know about this line." She's like, "Oh, that's I was thinking the same thing." And I was like, "Yeah, we could do it with a look." "Oh, yeah." So we really hit it off well. And Sarah DeMont plays her friend, and she's just amazing. And their chemistry is just so natural, and they became really good friends on the show, which is cool. And then you got Mia Savari who plays Alma, and she was just incredible. She was kind of, it's interesting because her character is kind of outside the circle, and she was outside the circle when shooting. Like she was doing her own thing and getting just work up and into it, and it was just so awesome to work with her. And then we have Alexis Knapp, and she's got her daughter Kai, plays the daughter in the movie Sadie, so that was really cool.
It's your actual daughter?
Her actual
Oh,
daughter.
that's cool. Okay,
Isn't
that's
that
awesome.
cool?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's their acting debut in a feature. So that was pretty awesome. I've got 4 kids. So for me, I thought that was really cool to see that. And you could just feel that bond with them, on set
Yeah.
and off. So yeah, that's the cast. And then we got Sherman Augustus. He was in Stranger Things. He played like the general, and he's great. Plays Officer Green. And oh man, Sherman was just awesome to work with. And yeah, we got a really good cast.
That's awesome. You talked a lot about psychological horror, but you've
Mhm.
also got a lot of effects happening. There's things coming out of people's mouths, and that's something that always
Yeah.
like freaks me out. Like eyeball
Yeah.
gore, I always list that like at the top of the list, but I forget until I see it that I really don't like shit coming out of people's mouths. It's unnatural. It's supposed to be the other way around. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, what is happening? And there's a lot of that. So
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about the effects?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of practical effects. I've always loved them. Something, tactile and just real about them. And I'm a kid of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s with the horror movies, 70s and 80s. So that was what I grew up with. So I always loved practical effects. So I really worked hard on trying to get as much as we could, and we used VFX to augment the demon with the flies, and the fly was VFX and some things, but really try to do it on set as much as possible. We built the demon suit. A great company in LA, the effects company, helped. We built the whole model, the demon. Troy James played the demon, and we built the suit, and then augmented it. And but it turned out really well. And of course, we had all the goo and the sludge and all that fun stuff. What's interesting about practical is, as cool as it is, though, it is time consuming, right? Because you
Mhm.
are there, you have to do cleanup, when you have to do so, when you're doing an indie film, you can't do a ton of takes, and it's like you got to get it, you got to get it. And I mean, even on Willy's Wonderland, I did some practical stuff, and it's like I got one take of it, and that was it. And if I didn't get it, then I don't get it. So you always have to be, the crew always has to be on guard and ready to go and make sure that we get that magic the first time, or maybe second time, not really third time or fourth time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but it's fun. It gets it really puts your A game on, and it kind of throws back memories for me of making movies and film, right? Because
Mhm.
when you're making movies and film, you didn't have time to let the digital camera roll and just, oh yeah, let's just keep it rolling. It's like you had to make sure, just like when we shot 35 film, right? Like you had to make sure that was the photo you wanted,
Mhm.
because you were going to get it developed. So that's really cool about practical effects, is like you just got to make sure, and you got to get it there. You get the magic right there, and the crew gets psyched because they see it, and everybody gets pumped. And so it was fun having a lot of practical effects on the Accursed.
That also creates a certain kind of energy too. I mean, there's the excitement of it, but then everyone is on board with like, all
Mhm.
right, we get like maybe one or two tries at this, so we all better like nail it. So like
Yeah.
everyone is in this mindset of like their piece of this puzzle like needs to be
Yeah.
on for this. And I feel like that's like
Exactly.
it's like a stress, but it's like also like a fun kind of energy too. Like we're all in this together, like
Totally.
fun
Totally. And everyone's
stress.
a film fan, all the crew, and so
Mhm.
they're reminiscing about their favorite movies with practical effects. And so it's just kind of a homage to that, right? It's like when we do that, it's just, I'm thinking about the movies like Evil Dead and the Sam Raimi stuff, and just all that, original John Carpenter Halloween, I mean, movies that, now the films today, some of them, they just feel like cutscenes from video games, and they just, to me, they lose me as an audience member, because it's like, I just can't, it doesn't feel real.
Mhm.
And I knew that going in on this movie, we were telling a real story, an intense story. And I was like, okay, we can't have the VFX be lame and cheap and just, cartoony, because then it will just destroy their whole narrative of what we're trying to do. So
Yeah.
really worked hard. There was a great company called Entropic. They did the post-production on the film, and they also did the color correction, everything. They also did the VFX. So I worked with them and the cinema makeup school, who built the demon suit and some of the other practical effects. And we worked together, storyboard a lot of stuff, but everybody was on the same page. And that's what's great, is that everybody knew, like, okay, we're going to do it this, you need this prop, okay, in order to get this look, we're going to help the VFX augment. We got to scan this practical arm, things like that. And so basically it was a lot of communication, but everybody was on the same page and knew what parts they were going to do. And I felt like at the end it really came together, you know.
I love that. It's funny because as you were talking about being a fan of visual effects or of practical effects, sorry, I was gonna say, oh yeah, you just mentioned that you have a signed Sam Raimi poster just off screen there, and then you
Yeah.
mentioned Sam Raimi. I was like, there we go, there it
Yep.
is.
There it is. Yep.
There's a very specific moment in this movie where I was like, that is a very Sam Raimi kind of vibe, and I won't say what it is because I don't want to spoil it, but maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about.
No, I love Sam Raimi. He's one of the filmmakers for me, and of course Raiders. But when I was a child of the 70s and 80s, so I grew up with Star Wars, and Star Wars to me was like handed down by God. Like, George Lucas, they didn't make like just they say, and the fifth day, and I give you Star Wars, and so I was like, okay, that's it. But then when I saw Raiders, and then I got a little older, I saw Evil Dead, and I was like, wow, now that's what a director does. That's what you can do with a camera. That's what you can do. You can do very visceral things and energy and things like that, just with different lenses. And I started just learning what a director did. And funny enough is I remember as a kid, my mom gave me some money to go get some milk and eggs at the store. And there was a new video store that opened and they had Evil Dead there. And I had the money in my pocket and I was like, is it either the milk and eggs or Evil Dead? And they had one copy and I rented Evil Dead.
Hell yeah.
And I went home and I told my mom and I said, Mom, she's, where's the milk and eggs? I said, they ran out, but I do have this VHS of this movie. And my sister, of course, said, he's a movie addict and you need to ground him. And they did. And, but so Evil Dead represents a coming of age,
Right.
no, but not to do kids. The stores usually don't run out of milk and eggs, unless maybe pandemic, right? And then maybe, but yeah. So that'll always be special to me with that movie.
I love that. I was gonna ask, like, how much trouble did you get in? But you're like, but look what you grew up to be, though. So it was worth it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That was like your early cinematic
totally.
like schooling. So it's a good thing that you like ditched the milk and eggs and you're like, that's like very Jack and the Beanstalk, by the way. Like you
Yeah,
sold you
totally.
sold the cow and
Yeah.
where's the money? You're like, oh well, I got these magic beans. You're like, listen, we're not gonna eat milk and eggs tonight, but feast upon Evil Dead. Like
Yes, yes.
the body of Ash compels you. Like
Love it.
oh man, that's
I love it.
awesome. Where did you shoot this? Because there's like very like that Spanish moss is like beautiful and it creates such like a vibe as soon as you arrive like at like the main location.
So it was in Savannah, Georgia. And what was cool is and another Evil Dead reference, we built the cabin in a school gym. So this school, they sold the school, elementary school, to a church. And the church, through COVID, they were having sermons outside. So they weren't using the inside. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to let us use this gym. Did they read the script? But I'm like, okay, that's great. Hollywood, right? Great. Love it. So we built the whole cabin inside this gym because I wanted to be able to have moving walls and stuff and just do like interesting things with the camera. And so that was exciting because Benji and my production designer Burns did a fantastic job. And we shot inside that, and then we found another kind of house cabin for the exterior, and so we did that as well. But it was very important to me because you can't find these cabins. You're shooting in a real cabin. I'm shooting in a corner and on side of the wall, and that's about it, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it was important to me to find a space where I could really be cinematic and move the camera and build the world and build those rooms and everything. So that was exciting. So we shot in Savannah, Georgia, and that vibe there, man, it's like if walls could talk, you just feel it. Like they've been around a long time, seen a lot. The spookiness vibe. I mean, we're sitting there having lunch one day, and it turns out, and it's like a mausoleum, like it used to. I was like, oh, that's wonderful. Like I just had some pate, and it's like ghosts following me, So, but it was cool because that was the vibe we were going for, and with the Spanish moss, and just you just immediately when you're there, you just feel the mood, the kind of the again that thick and the wetness, in the air, and that just misty,
Yeah.
and that's like we try to capture that for the movie, and so it became its own character into itself for the film.
No, it absolutely is. I've never been to Savannah. I've been to Louisiana, and that was like so. I mean, I grew up in California. I'm Southern
Mm.
California, born and bred,
Yeah,
grew up in the
yeah,
desert, then moved to like LA, lived at the beach for a while. So, like, Spanish moss and like swamps, like, to me, I'm like, that's like the most cinematic as it gets because I've only seen that shit in movies, and I was a movie nerd
yeah,
growing up. So then I go there and I'm like, it just feels so different because you're like, how is this real life
yeah,
when it's so
yeah,
far removed from anything that you've actually been in? But yeah,
yeah,
just it comes across on screen. I'm like the Spanish moss, and it's just you're just like I'm like this looks like nothing that I'm used
yeah,
to seeing on my day to day.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. What are some of the favorite movies that made you want to get into the industry that really inspired you?
I was big on Tim Burton when I was a kid for sure, and I think kind of like your Evil Dead moment, like
Yeah,
the moment when I realized like that this stuff wasn't just handed down by God, but it was like humans making this stuff. Like I
yeah,
like Edward Scissorhands, I think was the first time I realized like, oh no, it's like a guy who was like saying like I want it to look like this and I want it to feel like this. And then
wow,
my mind was just blown and I'm like, oh, you could do this? Like this is a job?
yeah.
Like
Yeah. I remember hearing that pitch because, of course, Beetlejuice and then Batman. And then I was like reading Premiere Magazine back in the day. And they were like, Edward Scissorhands, a boy who, grows up with scissors for hands. And I was like, you can't even like picture it. It's just
right.
like, what? And then you see the movie and you're like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And it's
Mhm.
just awe-inspiring, right? And
Yes.
Tim Burton is another one who, yeah, he just makes. There's nobody like Tim Burton, nobody, and his art is amazing. I went to Nightmare Before Christmas, the opening night at the El Capitan when it
Oh,
first came out,
yeah.
and that vibe when you went there and you saw that movie, it's like wow, you're witnessing a classic.
Yeah.
It was like a Wizard of Oz moment where you're watching something, you're like, wow, this thing is going to live on. Well, I'm going to be way past dead on this planet, and this thing's going to continue. And it has,
Yes.
and he's just, I went to an art exhibit that had a lot of his work in, and I loved when I was in high school, I remember Vincent, his short film. You've seen that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. And I saw that in a short film festival,
Mhm.
and that was the Cal Arts student who did this, and then he was
Right.
on to do,
God.
yeah, and then he was doing, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then it was like, whoa, and then Beetlejuice, and then it was like he's doing Batman with Michael Keaton, and at that time everybody was like, oh my God, Michael Keaton's gonna be the worst, and he was getting hate mail and all that, and so yeah, he's Tim Burton's just, I love all his stuff. It's just he's great.
He's just so great at world building. And I think those are my favorite filmmakers where it's like my thank you, Siri. Appreciate it. But just like the world building and anytime a filmmaker, like I'm like, I go to the movies for escapism. Show up, like build me a whole ass universe, put me in a whole other world, and I will fall in love with it. Like I'm here for it. Also, I love that you said Michael Keaton was getting the hate mail and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that kind of stuff doesn't happen nowadays.
Well, exactly, and that's the thing. It's like he was totally, and now look at him. He's like one of the best Batmans ever,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, it takes sometimes it just takes time. Some movies come out and people think they're the worst, horrible things. I mean, Blade Runner, right? Blade Runner comes out, people are just saying how horrible. Now it's the, number one of the, number one movies of all time,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, I guess art, when you talk about art, I think it's kind of thing like if it lasts the test of time, and if it
Yeah.
moves you. And I read a thing today. I don't know if you read that thing about Scorsese when he was talking about film and how they just talk about projection. You got to read it. It was kind of heartbreaking, and I agree with everything he said, and it really made me pause at just what's going on with the industry, because it's like, oh, this movie makes this much money in this country, and this movie makes this, and it's like that's all. Sometimes it's all about, right? And it's
Yeah.
like that's not, man. It's like we all got in here. If my movie could just inspire one person to go pick up a camera and go make a movie, if they see Willy's Wonderland and go, oh my God, I want to make a movie. That to me is why I'm in this industry, right? And I'm a little older now, and I've got kids and stuff, and I kind of see it's the new voices, and
Mhm.
passing the torch a little bit. So it's like The Accursed is an ode for me to like the 70s movies, of the horror movies that I grew up. Willie's was kind of a love letter to the 80s.
Mhm.
And that's kind of, and even though that, we are in 2022, and my kids, what I love is that they keep me young, they keep me current and things like that. But it's like it's great to have new voices, and I love Tim Burton, but it's like at the end of the day, where's the new Tim Burton? We need the new Tim Burton,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of exciting to have, kind of a throwback and a homage to these things, and also try to be contemporary
Mhm.
and try to push the boundaries and do something new and different. With the Accursed, some people could say it's a slow burn. I happen to like slow burns, but I also know that we're in this mode of just go, 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 give it to me. Okay, information, and I call them like empty calories sometimes, because we
Uh-huh.
just don't sit and talk about movies anymore.
Right.
They just kind of pass through us. I was thinking about that the other day too, like, you and I would go see The Accursed, we'd go see a Tim Burton movie, and then we could talk about like we're doing now
Mhm.
over, coffee or whatever. But now it's like, no, I watch it and I go, this movie sucks. And I text you, don't worry, it sucks. Like, okay, I'll watch it later when you do laundry, or this is awesome, you got to see it. Great. But it's solitary, it's singular. And we're not getting that audience, the emotion, especially post COVID. And
Mhm.
so I'm really excited. I hope people start going back to the theater. I'd love for people to see The Accursed in the theater, if they can. But I love just making movies for the theater. I made The Accursed when I shot the movie. We shot it in large format for the big screen. And I know though that that's different now and it's changed, but there's just something about, communal experience and going to the films, and that's what I hope that we can, bring back a little bit. So
I love that. That's great. I also, you know what? I mean, I have a pretty decent sized screen and also sit relatively close to it, but I would
nice.
love to just see some of that like effects on the
Yeah.
big screen.
Yeah. They look good.
Yeah, I'm sure because I'm like, it looks pretty fucking good. And that's when I was like, all right, they went a lot of like practical on this, which I appreciate.
Cool.
Resonates a little harder, you know?
Yeah.
This is maybe a little bit off topic, but I gotta ask you, do you have a favorite Nick Cage moment?
Okay, so on Willie's,
Mhm.
gosh, there's so many of them. One of my favorite moments was just the first day of shooting, and I shot, I've shot the opening sequence and the ending sequence. The first shot was actually the ending sequence when he's driving away. But I was like, "Oh, Nick, that's great. We got it. We're gonna move on." He's like, "Okay, Kev, we're in it now." And it was just so cool to have Nick Cage saying we're in it now. Like he was the team partner with me on
Mhm.
that movie. And another thing is when every time he would take out one of the animatronics, he'd be like, okay, one down, seven to go, two down, six to go. And that was really cool. So he's just an awesome guy, and I'm so happy for his new movies and how successful they've been, and it's great.
Me too. I'm like he seems like he'd just be really cool to work with and just genuine, but
Yeah,
I'm really glad to see that he's just at least like particularly from horror fans like in the genre. There's like a shit ton
yeah.
of love for him, so I'm very excited to
Right.
see
Well, he's a
that.
film lover just like us. I mean, when we were making Willie's, he was doing our Dario Argento fest. He was watching all those movies, and we talk about the Vincent Price movies and just the Hammer horror, and just he's huge film fan just like us.
That's awesome. I also feel like if he wasn't, he wouldn't do the projects that he does. Like
Agreed.
based on the projects that he takes on, I'm like, you're a film nerd like we are. Like
Yeah, totally. Yep.
all right, and last question. Speaking of film nerds, list some of your favorite witch movies. Like let's go like top 5 witch movies.
Oh wow, top 5 witch movies. That's a good question. Okay. Well, The Witch, that was amazing, right?
Nice.
Like that
Mhm.
was just so good. I mean, okay, look, I'm gonna have to throw Wizard of Oz in there. I mean, it's a witch, but she
Nice.
was monumental. I mean, come on, right? You got to do that. Um, it was kind of cool. I like the movie. I was in college when it came out. The Craft. That I thought
Mhm.
that was kind of a cool, kind of an edgy movie.
Life
Um,
changing for me. Okay, good.
was it life changing? Okay, great. That's
That
awesome.
movie for young girls at the time, like I
Yeah.
was watching, I wasn't allowed to watch it. So it was like we had like pay-per-view back in the day. So it would be like scrambled. If you didn't pay for it, you could hear it and the picture would be scrambled. So I would like tune into the craft and just kind of listen to it like it was like porn because it was scrambled and like
Wow.
ready to like change the channel when my mom walked in the room, you know? So like, yeah.
Wow. Um, you know, let me think. So there's two other ones. You know, what's interesting, I was just trying to think about. I'd have to throw some 70s really cool movies, and I'm looking. I mean, got my collection here, and drawing a blank. I'm a big physical media fan.
Okay.
I've got a lot of horror films. Gosh, you know, one movie I just saw. You know, you have to see movies again, right, to be like, oh, that was one of my favorite films. Or, but it's called Lust, the Flower of Evil. Like that was
Okay.
really cool. Um, and that it was a little supernatural, but it was really cool. You know, I like. Gosh, if I had to, I was thinking of another witch movie. Hmm. Gosh, you got to name me some right
You
now.
referenced Rosemary's Baby. I don't know if that lands in your top 5 or just close to it.
Rosemary's Baby, definitely. I always pictured that as more like satanic,
Same.
like The Omen. Yeah, but
I
if you want
always
to give
go
me Rosemary's
satanic,
Baby,
but
I'll
I'm
take
like,
it.
we could count it as a witch movie. They're like a coven, kind of, like I feel like they're.
That's cool. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take that.
But
What
I'm with
else?
you. I
I'm trying.
typically lump it in as like satanic and like demonic kind of stuff, but I feel like it also kind of qualifies as
Mhm,
witch.
mhm.
Suspiria, we got.
One of the scariest. One of the Suspiria, amazing. I have. Oh, that's amazing. I think that's
Awesome.
probably one of the best. Yeah, I'd say Suspiria for sure.
Nice.
That movie's incredible. Did you like the remake?
I did. Totally different. I'm
Yeah,
such a fan of the original. That's one of my like not just favorite horror
Goblin.
movies, but just favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
So the new one I enjoyed, but it's just like it's a separate thing unto
yeah,
itself. Like they're two
yeah,
different beasts, and I enjoy both of them.
yeah. I agree with you. Oh yeah, Suspiria is incredible. I mean, the cinematography in that and the soundtrack, it's incredible. So yeah, I'd say Suspiria for sure.
Nice. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
We will accept those answers. All right.
And Rosemary's Baby is cool. Like you get me that one, that's fine. That's good too. So
Okay. As I just start getting all this hate mail now, like, Angel, that's not a witch movie. And I'm like, we
I
said
know, right?
blurring the lines a little bit. I acknowledge that it's a satanic movie, but we're like, it's there,
What are your favorite witch movies? I'm curious.
um you named some of my favorite ones. So The Craft for sure. Suspiria is my number one. So Suspiria, The
Okay.
Craft. Hmm. I had something else. Rosemary's Baby, if we're counting that one, that would be in the list as well.
Okay. Okay.
Mm, I don't want to name all the same ones you named. Wizard of Oz, you threw me for a loop on that one though. That was cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
The Worst Witch is one of my favorites. Have you seen that? With Tim Curry?
Never seen that.
No, it's like a I don't know if
No.
it's
Oh,
like
it's
a
Tim
made for
Curry. I need to
TV.
see it.
Tim Curry plays this weird like
Okay.
wizard
Oh, I
dude.
need to see it.
A musical. He sings a really weird song with bad green screen behind him, which makes it all the better. There's weird rhymes that don't really make sense, but they threw it in there because it rhymes. I'm gonna send you the clip because it's too good.
Oh, I totally want to see this. Okay.
Okay,
Awesome.
I think you're gonna appreciate it. It's fucking weird. It's for kids. It's very weird. I don't know
Okay.
if it's like late 70s, early 80s, but it's bonkers, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this. This was really fun.
Thank you. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone, catch the accursed.